within the healthier elements. But it needs guidance in our culture because, as I say, we're a cult of the individual. We're a cult that shames dependency, which is a great burden on our children. But we don't understand that we can be psychologically in very dependent states in regression around trauma and abuse at any point in our life. And we desperately need help the same way someone with no legs needs a wheelchair. I mean, it's that kind of thing. It's not like use some grit and get up on those legs. If they're amputated, you're a sociopath if you don't help with a wheelchair. Well, when people are in these states of regression, we are sociopathic. When we fail to acknowledge, fail to train to acknowledge, fail to respond, help, and instead shift the inadequacy onto our victims of abuse by pretending that it's not even there or just in their head or whatever. And so that, the only thing that I was terrified was of being inadequate in this framework, because I saw that she would continue to grow healthily and beautifully if she had a decent if she had one decent person in her life. And I also saw she didn't. And so I was it with all of my inadequacies. And my government ganged up on me to make immigration almost impossible. It wasn't personal, of course. We just do that to foreigners. And that led to further financial pressures. It took, a lot of time and money to navigate that. And I'm dealing with this feeling of overwhelming helplessness and grief in this period. So, that's the downside of really loving and taking a risk to care for someone is it's very painful if you fail. And I didn't know if I'd win or not. But that was why I had that rule with myself. I'm not going to give her money. I'm not going to, be a sugar daddy, anything like that. Every month of our interaction, every week of our interaction, she's going to do this, this, and this. That means she won't need me if I'm gone. Or if she's tired of me. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like my mother was stuck in a dependent financial relationship, and she hated my father. But she was too lazy to learn how to, take care of herself, and so she just, resentfully hated. And I never wanted to be in that relationship, which is one reason I've always asked the question and looked, is this a woman who wants to take care of her own well-being and is going to grow stronger in our relationship? Or is she going to put herself in a dependent state and I'll cooperate with that? And then one day she may want to leave for good reasons, but then not do so and then hate me and hate herself because she doesn't have the skills. In severe PTSD, I was a nightmare guest in many hotels because my government wouldn't let my wife come and be with me in my house, so I had to fly overseas. And I stayed at a 5-star hotel in Manila called the Pan Pacific. And doors would bang, and this would kind of ruin my day. And this would happen. Every little thing is highly exaggerated with PTSD. And I decided to turn that as much as I could into a benefit. Because I like business and I like service, and there were areas that this hotel could greatly improve. And so, rather than just feeling, ashamed, I guess, of how reactive I was about everything, I would send the hotel manager, a Frenchman, 5 to 30-minute dissertations on how this or that bit of the hotel could be run better, in a way that would help me with my PTSD, but would simultaneously benefit the hotel and training and all that. Because when you're with PTSD, you're just looking at everything with a magnifying glass. But everyone else is looking at the same thing, just with a more balanced perspective. And so this manager taught me about leadership, because here was High saying that sexual abuse was with a high facilitator was not a high issue. And here's this guy dealing with this outrageous American who's disturbing him for 5 to 30 minutes a day about, always bring water immediately. I'm thirsty. As soon as you walk in the room, pour some water. It's hot. Don't wait to take the menu. Then, I ordered this, and they said they couldn't do a gluten-free this, and blah, 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 blah. Do I have to go to a mall myself to get the rice flour for this? Anyway, there's tons of rice flour around this. There's a 5-star hotel. I'm paying hundreds of dollars a day to stay here. Why can't you get some rice flour? And and I'm thinking this will be nice for the next gluten-free person. But it's just I've got to let off some of this pent-up, energy somehow. So I'm really using this hotel as my therapy. And part of me feels terrible about it because, it's no fun having such a picky client. But I was really grateful for this hotel owner. For example, when I went there the first time, they didn't have a heater, and the temperature was set at 65 degrees, which most people have, but you couldn't open the window. And I complained. I said I could stay at most cheap hotels in the Philippines, open the window, and be as warm as I wanted to be. I'm cold. I have a cold, and I'm cold. And I'm cold in a 5-star hotel. And I can't open your window. Anyway, you get the idea. So I did this for, and his response was to say, well, next time you come, stay at a suite and we'll buy a heater for you. We'll continue air conditioning the whole hotel automatically because that's how it's set up. But then after we make your room cool with air conditioning, we'll get you a heater and you can plug in and get it hot again. And the Diamond Hotel down the road hadn't been able to accommodate this. So I when I learned that I had a receptive hotel manager that was interested, that's when this dynamic began. But I helped the hotel get, I think about a 5% better rating on Expedia, because I stayed there, I think 80 times, and every time I'd leave them a 5-star review, because every time they took what was already the best hotel and made it better. So I wrote rave reviews for them on Expedia endlessly. And they improved, 25%. So by the time I was done with being cooped up in Manila, waiting for my government to let my wife to come home with me, I felt the hotel had graduated from the most persnickety, hotel inspector imaginable. But the thing is, that was the attitude of the manager. He owned every bit of it. He had designed the furniture in every one of the rooms, etc. He had made that hotel. And his general response was, I've been telling them this as well. Good point. I'm going to send your recording. So he would send my recording, and 300 staff would sit there and listen to this recording. And he would say, see, this is how the customer feels. And they all knew me by name. There'd be all these people. I'd never seen them, hello, Mr. Rose, hello. Everywhere I went, they all had a picture of me with all these notes. And it helped immensely because I was feeling smaller and more helpless than I had ever felt. I felt ashamed of my behavior. I felt unwanted. I felt unloved. I felt lied to. I felt betrayed. I felt brokenhearted. I felt unwanted anywhere on the planet. And one one decent hotel manager turned me into an asset. He had the intelligence to seize upon the opportunity of the most vocal client in the hotel's history to upgrade service 25% over already decent service. And I can't say enough about him. And America and France has a little bit of tension, in their humor and stuff like this. This was a French manager. And he would invite me to the dinner table with him and his family. We went out to music events together. We talked about business philosophy and the challenges of hotel. I learned what the issues were in running a 5-star hotel. The whole thing was very interesting, very fascinating. I just loved how much he loved. He loved his business and he loved his clients. And that love was translated into care, and then into empathy, and then into responsiveness and competency, which brought love. I loved the fellow for the excellence that he demonstrated. And so he's kind of not my therapist, not high, but this guy. I spoke with the Pan Pacific as a chain, and I spoke with his boss, just to tell him, because I'd stayed at around 50 5-star hotels in this kind of period, and I said, this is the only guy who knows how to turn lemon into lemonade. And, just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So he has a 25%, he has better systems. He has heaters. He has gluten-free stuff. And this is all benefiting other people as well. So anyway, that's great. Sexual orgasm was one of the few things in my state of high stress PTSD. After an orgasm, I could actually sleep. So benefit of sexual orgasm as a PTSD therapy. However, as I say, I'm emotionally connected with my body deeply, and so it's very difficult to find people who knew how to hold and love the depth of emotion that would come with the orgasm. Again, I'm very grateful to my wife. She can't do it verbally, which is an irritant because I'm a completely verbal person, but she holds it energetically and emotionally and physically. I never feel ashamed. I never feel small. I never feel scared. And if I feel frustrated at the lack of words, I'll just script them for her and she'll just give them back to me. And it's like, great, I knew that was true, but I need to hear it in words. I'm one of the most verbal people in terms of love language. You're a touch person. I can give you the love you need in touch, and I do, intentionally, and create you feeling totally loved. I'm not going to feel that way unless you give me that in words. The challenge being at times during this PTSD process before I met my wife, I would be re-traumatized by women I would form emotional attachments with, and then they would completely dishonor that emotional attachment and, just, again, reenacting the betrayal. Getting a dog, like so many things that I've done for my wife, they've benefited me. And so getting a dog has been, helpful. The safety and the love and the healing. For example, my dog sits on my chest while I'm on my side in the morning. And every morning, right as I wake up, he knows that I'm waking up. And so he runs down the stairs and sits himself on my heart. So I have a warm, present, loving body on my heart chakra every morning. And he's done that more and more as he's gotten older. And that companionship is something that I cannot find in a single person that I know. Anyone could do it. And this is the bizarre thing about our culture. That improves my day and helps me get out of bed about, at least 15%. That's huge. Those 5-10 minutes. There's no service in the United States to order a morning cuddle. I don't know why. You don't need a degree. You don't need an age. You don't need a political affiliation. You need zero training other than to be a human being who cares about other people. But it is not on the menu, like so many other things that would be far more nourishing to buy than the latest iPad. But my dog can do it, and does. And so that's the benefit. He also is a tiny Pomeranian, and so he barks at almost everything because he's scared of it. And that's the negative. When I'm feeling helpless and, having a dog barking at and upsetting people, nobody likes to be barking. That's the negative of that. Building the High websites were very important in eliminating overwhelm and helplessness around a couple of things. When leadership in a community doesn't come forward and say the whole story, you're either invisible to most people or you have to repeat yourself over and over again to people who were not planning on a 2-hour narrative. And so they get upset because you're ruining their expectation. They weren't expecting you to be sexually abused. And so when they said, "How are you doing?" they weren't expecting to hear that. And they don't want to listen to that. And they don't want to look like a shit. And so they're angry at you for putting them in that situation. And this is one of the shitty things we have awaiting the next sexual abuse survivor in our culture. And there was a huge part of me, because all the abuse in my childhood was covered up by New Age hippies who said it was all love as well. And so there's an incredible backlog of, resentment at having to live under the narrative of my abusers and be punished for doing anything about it. And so putting the stuff up on the website did a couple of things. One, if anyone ever asks me for the rest of my life, what happened, I say, look at the website. I don't have to relive it, 10,000 times. One. Two, it helps satisfy my conscience because, for example, the other sexual abuse survivor who had been discouraged by Janet Dale from going to the police that contacted me afterwards, she said, I found you online because when it happened to me, etc., I went online and there it was. And so there's a sense that if someone wants to find out the shadow side, every organization has a shadow side. It's just a matter of how it deals with it. Secrecy and suppression and denial, or integration and opening and transparency. Well, I asked Jason to be transparent. He said it wasn't a high issue and refused to address the subject. And so I'm being transparent on High's behalf for the benefit of the community. So that vulnerable people have a warning if they check online or whatever. And so this helped get the voice out. It helped break the pattern of secrecy. It helped make the sense of powerlessness one of significance. Because really loving someone or scaring someone and causing them pain, but we all know that there's significance in both. When someone really cares about you, you're significant. When someone is scared of you, there's significance. When they're in pain, there's significance because there's impact. And one of the damaging aspects of the whole dynamic was that I felt like my entire life had been upended tipsy-turvy, that my finances, that my health, that my emotional well-being, that my safety in therapy, and the whole thing had been upended to protect a dirty secret that any ethical organization that even wasn't a nonprofit, just the average professional, like if a plumber ruined your whole house with water damage while repairing a faucet, they've got insurance, they're going to really apologize and do this. I couldn't even get an apology out of the high facilitators, because why would they apologize if it wasn't a high issue? And that was maddening, And so I understood from their mindset that they would be quite peaceful brushing me under the carpet as long as I wasn't there, but that they would be very upset because it seemed like what they were protecting was their image. Why wouldn't you tell the community and apologize and this and that and what you're doing and be a leading organization? Why would you tell an abuse survivor to keep it on the down and low if it's not for image? We want to look good, and so you don't get any support from the community because that would damage our reputation. We'd have to acknowledge there was something we fucked up about that led to your needing support. And so you're not going to get any support. I was even knocked off the list, so I couldn't ask for it directly because, that's what protocols of secrecy and silence dictate. And so, so there was the rebellious teenager like, fuck you, you're not going to brush me under the carpet. But when you're, weeping on a floor in Thailand, they have brushed me under the carpet. And so this was a way to answer that sense of all of this is for nothing. They're just going to do it all over again with someone else and deny the whole thing and da-da-da. And it's and it's so miserable, and no one can stop it and blah 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 because they're just gonna, and most people won't have a 10-hour recording to back them up and stuff, and so this was an answer to that. On the negative side of that, once I told the facilitators what I was doing, they then sued me because they didn't want any of this to come up on a search for high. And so that it would come up for a search for high, I bought a high domain name. Now, High hadn't bought this domain name for 20 years. Anyone can buy your own domain name, but they hadn't bothered. They didn't want it. But they didn't want anyone learning about this under their name. So they tried to sue to get the domain from me so that it wouldn't come up. And this was, again, a huge insult because it's like, this isn't a high issue. You're not going to give me a penny of support and help, but you're going to spend money to silence me after you've already silenced me to such a point that it's caused PTSD because I don't trust any of you anymore. And so this was the anger, of getting this, is you then, when you're around small-minded individuals that don't have a clear sense of ethics, etc., they're going to, they're outraged at their public image. They're not outraged that they're sexually abusing their clients and doing something about it. They're outraged that people know about it. That's, they're both outrageous. Sure, you're nothing wrong with your image, but how about basing it on facts? How about caring about your image enough and loving yourself enough to treat your clients well, that a long-term veteran who's spent tens of thousands of dollars with you in 100 events and worked with 4 facilitators would tell everyone how great you are, rather than the truth being that this is one of the most traumatic events of my life. And you didn't even deal with it, to the point where I have to then spend more energy to protect others. And so that's the negative side of that, because every time you try and do something that seems healthy, if you get dinged for it, like I had to defend the lawsuit, while I was in a miserable state. It's like I wanted people to be saying, how can we help with this misery? Not how can we add to it to protect our image? And so that's the negative. When you're in a sociopathic environment where people are very scared and ignorant, then that's what you're going to get from them whenever you interact. What you want, of course, is love and support. What you're going to get is fear and sociopathic behavior. I wanted a cuddle buddy, but I couldn't write to that because they knocked me off the email list because I told them I would tell people the truth, not make stuff up. I would actually be intimate and say, this is what's happening with me as a result of what's going on here. And that's unacceptable in a shame-secrecy dynamic around this. Now, talking to Peter Sandhill and getting to know my feminine self was a plus. Noticing all the ways that he dishonored that was incredibly painful. Rebelling, blaming, and criticizing high, I did a lot of that, managed pain and managed the sense of invisibility and helplessness. It was medicine for that, for which I'm grateful. It's part of the grieving process, blame, because it's just so difficult to deal with what is in reality a movement to where, I may never have anything to do with the high community, high, its facilitators, or anything ever again. Because I'm not going to be silent around this. And if they're in a defense protocol of denying and minimizing, it's dishonoring to do that. Well, I lost in one stretch 4 therapists, trust in the high organization. I lost the man I'd fallen in love with in the psychedelic journey. I lost a resource to nourish and do healing and fun projects with because they're gatekeepers. And what they usually do when someone has some beef with high is they say, you have to agree not to talk about and bring this up. That would be inappropriate or whatever, and we'll let you in under these conditions. In other words, they fuck you up, deny it and do it, and then if you want to go to a high workshop, they negotiate something, and they've done this several times with much smaller offenses. And I have no doubt that, that would be the humiliating conversation if I wanted to take a high workshop. Well, we want to make sure that you don't bring this up, and we all this and this and other. And they probably wouldn't even let me in anyway because I've spoken enough. They might not believe me even if I said so. And so that's, that's not how you don't respond to traumatizing someone by further traumatizing them. And that's, so that's it's a mixed bag. It's necessary pain management in this amount of pain to do some amount of self-blame and self-criticism and criticizing others and blaming and all of that. And it's better than just laying in bed in depression. It's enervating. It gets you out. But of course, once you move through and learn more and stuff. So once I'd be up and out and get my fix of blame for the day, then I would, try and do something useful that would reduce the pain long term. I had a Thai advocate named P.O., best friend of a former lover that Peter wanted me to marry. And she couldn't speak any English, I couldn't speak any Thai, but she took more interest in me. She was that adult, actually, that more than anything else would listen to me cry, would understand, would give me good wishes, and she'd listen. But she had a point. Her family started resenting me because everyone likes attention. She had a couple of children and a husband, and here she is comforting this foreigner, and this irked me from the perspective was that none of this would have happened had Peter Sandhill followed any kind of a basic ethics. And none of this would happen if the Human Awareness Institute was in any way ethical in acknowledging. I asked them to hold me and listen to me. And then I asked them, which none of them did. And then they excluded me, denied it, asked me to sign an abuse contract, etc., which turned the trauma into PTSD, as pain escalated, and they didn't respond to that. And I asked for an apology, and they didn't apologize. I got a few apologies for my difficult childhood. So if a high facilitator ever abuses you sexually or otherwise, and you ask for an apology, first you can expect silence. Then, if you threaten to sue them, they'll have a little conference amongst themselves, and they will all send a scripted apology for your bad childhood. So, if Felicia fingers you during a session, and you bring it up, nothing. But later, you can get an apology for a bad childhood. They said, "We're very sorry you had such a bad childhood," which is very nice. It's just not the apology I was asking for the profound impact of being excluded and shut down for doing the healthy and right thing with the board of a public nonprofit around sexual abuse. We could do a little better than that. So sleep deprivation was another technique. Sleep deprivation, oh, here's Philip. You can feel how upset I am, so we're going to carry Philip up here. Sleep deprivation helped a lot with pain management. It gave me constant jet lag for several years. I do it anytime the pain is overwhelming. I just stay up really late, binge watching something or other, and then when I'm absolutely exhausted, I crash and then sleep for 8 hours. And when I wake up, there's a reset that's going on. I feel dissociated, fuzzy, like jet lag. And that dissociation gives me a 30% pain anesthetic without having to take opioids. And so that's the pros and cons. Well, that's a big benefit. Except it makes it very difficult, particularly when I'm very particular about keeping appointments, to make appointments. With that kind of fluctuation back and forth, I can't be assured I will wake up before 4 p.m. And so for well over a year, I didn't make any appointments. Like I would say, when's the next time you have a 4 p.m. appointment? And they'd say, well, we could meet you tomorrow at 8 or this, that. So I would lose business and stuff because I couldn't deal with my pain in another way, and I was unwilling to take opioids. Physical pain and depression are teachers and methods of response. They say you've got to deal with this now, or you're going to be dead, or whatever. So they give a lot of urgency, and that's the benefit. I have transformed my life 700% in this period. It's called post-traumatic growth. So the pain is constantly saying change, 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 change. You got to change. The underlying reality is in pain. And so that's the plus. Lots of change. The downside is years of terror of all that pain. Facing pain that I just can't deal with. Disengaging with the culture is another, when it's very painful and frustrating every time I try and engage with the culture and the response I get, it isn't what I want, comes, okay, that's getting too triggering. So disengaging. Of course, there's a deep problem with loneliness and the unknown, and fear of that loneliness, because when isolation is not generally a very healthy state. However, the benefit is that I have connected with deep inner resources of healing that I didn't know existed, that showed up for me in that isolated state from the inner realms, and that have been teachers. And one of that has been a mathematical awareness of a lot of these things that I'd never articulated before, and so that's positive. Writing and implementing goals that manage fear. There's constant hassles in these waves of trauma, like savings are being depleted, the IRA is being depleted, keeping my business license active while I was overseas with a sociopathic protocol where they won't let you pay the bill online, but will penalize you if you don't pay it. But we need your signature, but we won't mail it to you. Okay, I mean, just endless stupidity like this really hits the fan when, trying to deal with crisis like this. And it's another reason I'm determined to do something, to stop other people going through this, because there's nothing innately wrong with any human being. But the software that we use to engage with each other can always be improved, and in some cases is dramatically and drastically flawed. And it's a disaster when you use a piece of software that creates vast amounts of negative impact that takes more energy than it would take to create the positive impact. When I scripted my apology for the high facilitators, I was giving them the easiest way imaginable to reduce most of their negative impact by showing some remorse for the way this had, severely crippled my life. Now that's the easy way. Sure, Dane, we're very, very sorry we did this, and we want to learn how not to do this. That's easy. Fighting about this for years, denying it, spending money to sue and suppress domains, breaking the law, that's the hard way. And so, and as a designer, that really grates on me. I spent all my designer time thinking about how to get more value with less energy. And every time I've offered that easily to the facilitators, they've come up with some way to make it harder, meaning they'd spend more energy and time to give me less of what I needed. And that's not personal. It's just simple as the protocol. Are we going to meet behind closed doors and decide what's good for you behind closed doors? Or are we going to meet with you as you asked face to face, understand the issue, and give you the support that will take the least amount of effort to reintegrate your learning, your knowledge back in the community? I created a bunch of online classes and teachings for landscapers and other things. Now, this is a positive addiction, I would call it. When there's compulsiveness because there's too much pain, you got to do something compulsively, which is pain management. I've tried to do my pain management in a way that would actually provide value. So blogging about trauma is populating YouTube with lots of information about trauma and how to deal with it. When I collapse exhausted after that, there's 10 hours of useful stuff out there for the next person to not feel so alone. Same with the landscape courses and stuff. So that's partly turning lemon into lemonade, trying to create as much value as possible for other people. Also, at various points when my physicality, I can't come into my body and do my normal work, one thing I can do anywhere in the world, even if I move to the Philippines, to be able to have some peace and, swim in warm water and stuff, I can do online work. And so in the back of my mind, developing the ability to create valuable online content is something like anything else. It takes lots of practice and skill. And so that increases the sense of self-reliance and also value. I contacted my family with positive and negative results. I affirmed and confirmed that in essence, my family is a family that has as its primary rule, thou shalt not feel or express deep feelings, which for a sensitive is a death sentence. So I've generally had nothing to do with my family. Contacting them in this period, reliving that drama and trauma of I can say as much as deep feelings as I want and you're going to pretend like they don't exist because that breaks the family rule. On the other hand, my mother behaved a little bit more like an adult than she ever has. I've usually had to be the adult, and she's been the child. She's been the child that is so childlike that I don't even bother to explain that she's a child because she's too childlike to get it. So it's an effort and frustration to try and explain to a child that they're a child, because they don't get it. So, I've carried being her parent in some ways, and I've carried the fact that I have been the unacknowledged and unappreciated parent because she's not mature enough to grasp that she's not being a parent, which is an incredible burden to carry. It's an absolute nightmare, for any child, and then you're just carrying that nightmare in complete invisibility because they don't want to deal with it. And my parents, in many ways, prepared me to grasp what was going on with high, because it's not all that different, as Ann Watts was kind enough to point out. Doing more physical work helped me to get more in my body. I've been doing that more recently as I can get into my body without being in enormous amounts of pain, being out in nice weather. Managing a crew, still difficult, so I'm doing more work alone, smaller projects. Hurts the income, benefits the psyche and exercise. And with that, with that, my wife has been able to help me, and she's fabulous. And so, I'm very lucky about that. Writing to high community is very frightening and lonely to realize that no one's really interested in engaging in the high community about any of this. And I kind of look at the fractal pattern of government and community and individual. And I think of how many of us are traumatized inside, are hurt inside, or lonely inside, and we don't want to deal with it. We just want to do our jobs and drink and get over it. And we come to, I'm in many ways embodying the cultural wound. The violation of the feminine, trauma, abuse, denial, secrecy, shame. So I'm embodying the cultural wound. And of course, the community and the culture wants nothing to do with it and just get on with their lives in an externalization of their own inner dialogue. And then, of course, you get to the country and you have the leadership abusing authority and violating and this and that and keeping secrets and attacking anyone who tells the truth. And the country is pretty much, I want to get on with my life. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to deal with it. And so there's the fractal pattern. And so it's definitely brought my attention to, if we want to have a country with decent leadership, it starts with having a nonprofit that we influence having decent leadership, which starts with knowing what decent leadership looks like and knowing what it doesn't look like, and partnering and everyone being interested in seeing that it happens, as opposed to, I don't want to happen, I just want to pay money and go have sex at high. Putting the email correspondence online helps with a variety of things. If I go to court, that's all there. One of the interesting things, because high was denying that this is a high issue, and they are to this day, I would engage with different facilitators as individuals, and they would tell me, this has nothing to do with high, I'm just engaging with you because I'm choosing to be generous or something in my spare time. And I think this was their story to protect high from legal stuff. It just enraged me, and may lead to a lawsuit, because I'm absolutely committed to seeing that the next high abuse survivor does not have to go through high's bullshit from their therapist, and have, you see, an ethical response is, we are so sorry, what can we do to make up for our gaffe? That's ethical thing, and it makes the person who's been abused feel important and valuable and safe. This has nothing to do with us, insane. Now you're dealing with insane people. And we have nothing to do with high, insane. You're my facilitators and therapists. But we're doing this in our spare time as a favor to you, out of the goodness of our hearts. Absolutely maddening. You want me to thank you for the goodness of your heart of lying to me and shutting this whole thing up. forget it. But you're asking me to be a supplicant so that you can hide your gaffe. And so, that's, is somewhat enraging. And having the emails again out there, I think it's good that any public nonprofit should know that the public that they're designed to serve has a right to know what their protocols are and how they're working, and this is part of that. Designing a community that's beautiful to live in, that would respond to PTSD and trauma. I was very aware that my needs as a PTSD survivor were very specific and very cheap to do, and that nobody was doing them. For example, it's not a huge expense to put rubber door stoppers on hotel doors so that the wood doesn't slam against wood. That costs 10 cents per rubber door stopper. It's just no one was doing it. And so there was just so little awareness. I would buy rubber door stoppers in the United States, and when I'd go over to Asia, I'd stick them in the door jambs of every door around my room so that I wouldn't be woken up and in shock for several hours, because that's the kind of jitteriness that PTSD provides. And so in 10xliving.org, I designed a whole community that would have made me 5 times happier and cost a third of the money that I was spending to be unhappy in 5-star hotels and just about anywhere else I knew how to be. And so that gives me a sense of hope for the future, and I'm quite interested in creating that community, since there are tons of veterans and people with PTSD and abuse that desperately need that kind of environment, and we're not providing it, and they are costing the economy billions of dollars in coping mechanisms because we're too lazy to spend $1 or $2 million in little modules of community that could do a 10 times better job of dealing with this. Writing on YouTube and Quora just helped me feel less isolated because, believe it or not, YouTube and Quora were more supportive of my trauma and PTSD than the high facilitators. It's wonderful. A sense, let's see. Watching Elon Musk, one of my great heroes during this whole thing, because I noticed that he was very intelligent, doing a lot of great things, and that because he wasn't spending ad revenue on the big networks, they were all bashing him in favor of their advertisers, Ford and Chrysler and all the other people that have no interest in a sustainable future. And so it helped me understand the politics of the situation, but also root for Elon and root for Edward Snowden and root for Julian Assange and send money to WikiLeaks. And, it's like, let's have some more truth tellers and perhaps not kill the next one. Let's see. So I did a psychedelic safety channel because I wanted to get clear in my head every mistake I'd made around doing the psychedelic therapy with Peter Sandhill and the first high guy. And I wanted other people to see the pros and the cons rather than, the U.S. government will throw you in prison for your own protection for expanding consciousness. So we've got sociopathic idiocy on the one hand, and we often have pie-in-the-sky optimism. If we could all just be high on marijuana 24/7, the whole world would be saved, and there's no problem about it, on the other side. So I wanted to just deal with if I can prevent a single psychedelic break, and creation of PTSD with that channel where I spent about 20 hours. I've spent about 5,000 hours in large amounts of pain repairing a break that could have easily been prevented at any number of 100 points along the way, and that was not prevented and that was often forcibly induced by profound incompetence. That's a stunning awareness. And I can block out the points moment by moment. The first point in my psychedelic session with Peter Sandhill, the first thing out of my mouth was, "Peter, you really hurt me 10 years ago. That was when he expressed sexual interest in me in a paid container and called it love and all that. And his response is that he's ready to be done with it. The whole point of a psychedelic journey is to open up and see the truths that you're hiding to protect your abusers, and that you're hiding from yourself because you don't know what to do with them, and that you're hiding from other people so that they won't get mad at you. That's what dissolves, among other things, in a psychedelic container. So it dissolves. Peter, you really hurt me. This is his great window to say, I'm in service. I'm being paid $175 an hour. Tell me how I hurt you. What could I learn from it? I'm really sorry. He could open to the gift of that profound transcendent moment. Or he can hide it in fear because he's afraid he's a bad therapist and he doesn't want to know what to do about it. He doesn't know what to do about it, and he doesn't want to deal with it. He doesn't want to feel bad. He wants to feel like a hero. And so he tells me, and you're very suggestive in psychedelic sessions, he says, Dane, I'm ready to be done with that now. So you're the abuser, and I'm telling you, and the abuser doesn't want to talk about it, so could we move on to the present moment where I'm going to reenact the abuse again? And then I won't want to talk about that either, and let's be done with that too, and aren't we the room of love and all this? And so that's an easy thing. You're being paid. You don't even have to pay. You're being paid to learn about your professional gaffes. I love it when a client will explain what I can do better in a way that I can get my teeth into. It's free, transcendent advice. That and more than 100 other opportunities, more than 1,000 to date, have been glossed over. Whenever you gloss over a pattern and try and control the information, first of all, the abuse repeats, so the karmic load and impact gets worse. Secondly, you don't learn from it. And thirdly, you start to spend more and more energy suppressing things that could go into changing things. And that's really the message around this. It's easier to change and succeed if you're out of ego than it is to suppress, control, and deny. It's easier, cheaper, more fun, and successful to do the right thing around this and learn and grow and have the community grow accordingly than it is to suppress it and then deny it and minimize and draw out the learning as long as possible. And it may lead to catastrophic failure. And so this is my learning, and this also is something that I, as part of my thesis, that if I did the exact opposite of the facilitator protocol, that my life would improve, which it has, was my wife gives me clues that I abuse her sometimes. And she doesn't say, Dane, you're abusing me in this and this and this way. She doesn't say, Dane, I've got to talk to you about your abuse. No. That would be easy. That would be like me telling Peter Sandhill, you really abused me, let's talk about it. And, no. She doesn't do that. She has dreams, for example. And I'll ask who the dream people are. And she'll say, well, you're this person. And it's like, well, that person's bullying you in your dream. So let's look at how I'm bullying you. That's kind of how it works. And, well, you're not bullying me. Well, your dream's saying I'm bullying you. Plenty of people have felt bullied by me. It would be perfectly understandable if you felt bullying. Don't make me feel good. I want to improve our relationship. And so we figure out what the dream means. And I usually do the work to try and figure out what part of her feels bullied by what part of me, or what part of her feels scared of what part of me. And then I change. And then my life gets better. I get happier, the relationship gets better, etc. That's intelligence. You listen and learn from feedback. And it is easier. I mean, no, I'm horrified that I'm scaring her or this or that. No, I don't want to be a bully. But if I don't want to be a bully, and some part of her is feeling bullied, then I've got to learn what it is and change it, or I will still be a bully, And so it works like that. And I have literally been staggered by the absence of that protocol amongst any healer that I've encountered in this whole dynamic. Um, and I guess that's one of the reasons healing has not become an excellent art in our culture. When you have a house done, you have a gutter cleaner, you have a gutter installer, you have a window wiper, you have a painter, you have a framer, and they all work together to create a very reliable structure. And they know the difference. You don't call a gutter person out to clean your windows, and if you do, they say, oh, you don't need a gutter cleaner, you need a window cleaner. This is what a gutter is, and I clean gutters. That's a window, and I don't clean windows. And the client says, oh, I didn't know, and they call a window cleaner. That's not how it works in healing professions. In healing professions, they say, I'm a great healer. I heal people. And you go out, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, they say, well, it worked for this other person, which is kind of like, well, the other person had clogged up gutters and started working again. But you didn't have clogged up gutters. You had windows that needed cleaning. And, well, this is what I do. And it's that sophisticated of a model we're dealing with at the present time. There is no integrated cross-referenced app that tracks all the symptoms. There's no way for all the different practitioners to relate together. There's no general healer that then subcontracts based on a full diagnosis of the issue. You don't get bids up front. You don't get warranty or return if you get fucked up by the healing. And this is one area Western medicine is superior. If you go into a hospital with a dinged finger and they cut off your right leg, you get compensation. Everyone knows exactly what's going on. They work on the system. You sue the hospital, whatever. And they try and triage and stuff. In the alternative fields, I've never had a triaged healer. No one ever said, I'm not the right one for this, you should do this. They all said they're the great. Sometimes they're terrible, sometimes, and they all have excuses about why you feel terrible when you feel terrible. When you go to an acupuncturist, I did this, and I got dissociated for 2 or 3 days. They said, I didn't go to an acupuncturist to be dissociated for 2 or 3 days. So, of course, I called them. I said, I've been feeling terrible since our session. And she said, oh, that happens sometimes. That's part of the healing process. So next time I come to you, I'm going to feel crappy. Why, if it's part of the healing process, why haven't I been foretold? What part of the healing process is feeling crappy for 3 days? How do I know it's part of the healing process? Why am I feeling crappy? Oh, I'm busy right now. I've got another customer. I guess I just should pay money to feel crappy. And if I don't want to feel crappy, stay away from acupuncturists. This is a complete jungled mess. And, that's one of the reasons I've encouraged the high facilitators to have a detailed questionnaire, which I think some of them may have acted on. No one's ever given me that except chiropractors. They give me these, 20-page documents about everything under the sun. And you go to your therapist and, hey, what's on your mind? So in conclusion, we have a very crude system of dealing with all of this. We don't prevent it very well. We leave people pretty much to their own device to get up with it. If it hadn't been for a stranger in a cafe talking about trauma, I wouldn't even have known what it was, let alone what to do about it. Looking back at my 30 high lover relationships, I would say that trauma was present in 90% of those relationships, but it was never talked about. Meaning not a single one of the traumatized women said, I've got past trauma, this and that, I've got reactivity around this and this, this is what it is how you deal with it around me, here's how to love me around this trauma. That would have been easy, but no one did. Instead, I would see sometimes severe traumatized states, and I would say, what's this on your face right now? And then they would be panicked about being seen because they're ashamed in a shame-based culture for having traumatic symptoms, and they would try and deny it. No, nothing's going on. Nothing's going on. It's like, you've never talked like that before. You're not darting your eyes around that because you're in peace and love. What is going on? And then they would get terrified as if they were going to be beaten because I was seeing them. That's the state of trauma in our culture. And it can flip to the other extreme. You traumatized me, you did this, and you're a bad person. That's also not terribly helpful. I have a trigger point. This is this. Could you help me with this? This is the landscape I'm in. We don't have a safe emotional conversation. I dutifully had a safe sex conversation with every single high woman I was sexual with. I never had a safe emotional conversation because I didn't even know what that looked like. I do now because I've invented it and because I now have it. Because I understand that a safe emotional conversation is probably more important than a safe sex conversation. If in doubt, use a condom and get tested, but talk about the emotional issues that you're bringing into the relationship and where they're sensitive and what will bring them up. And most importantly, how do you love me when I'm activated? How? If you don't know, I certainly don't know, and we need to have those conversations. Take care, and thanks for listening.